All right. So I'm Jake Farbman with your statewide Center for Student Success, the Council of County Colleges. We're pleased to have you and our presenters from Raritan Valley Community College to discuss today's topic, virtual parent and family outreach. We appreciate all of you being able to join us today. And what we're going to do, just a few housekeeping things. If you're concerned about bandwidth at all, where you are in your neck of the woods, it's okay if you need to turn your camera off. No problem, no worries. Secondly, just so since we're recording this and we don't get much interference, if you're not presenting or speaking, please mute your audio, your microphone, just so we don't get any glitches in the recording. And with all of that, let me end the poll and share the results. And I'll turn it over to Jason, Russell, Alicia, maybe, possibly, Jashay. I'll turn it over to the folks at Raritan Valley to go through these results, and then we'll get started with their presentation. So thank you all for being with us.
Hey, Alicia, do you want to go over the results? Or are you going to, we're going to do that later?
Yeah, you go ahead and start, and then I can do it. Can you do it later, Jake?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, so I'll do it now then. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Walker, and I am the Assistant Director of Student Life at Raritan Valley Community College. And I asked that you guys participate in this poll because we just wanted to understand what your perspectives was based on whether or not the institution should be involved in the student's journey, or looking at the parent and student relationship, and then also looking at the institution and the parent relationship. So it's a kind of across the board. I see that most people somewhat agree for each one. Well, let's start at the first one. Strongly agreed was 33%. That the institution and the student should be involved. The institution should be involved in the student development, or the parent should, well, I'm sorry, the parent should be involved in the student development. And then somewhat agree is 67%. And then in number two, it's more 22% strongly agree that the institution and student relationship has a great impact, and somewhat agree is 67%. And then there's 11% that just neither agreed or disagreed. And then when considering the institution and parent relationship, 56% strongly agree that we need to have full resources, information sessions, and dedicated support. And 33% somewhat agree, and 11% once again neither agree or disagree. So thank you so much for completing that poll. Just wanted to get a sense of where you guys were on those three different relationships. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Jason.
Oh, Alicia, thank you so much for going over that poll. I think it was very interesting to kind of set the frame for what we're really going to be talking about today, which is, you know, our parental outreach, kind of what we did here. So I think first I'll start with who you're going to be speaking to today. I want to thank everybody for showing up and participating in this session during this odd time within higher ed. But the crew that we have now, my name is Jason Fredericks. I'm the Dean of Student Affairs here at Raritan Valley Community College. We also have Russell Barefoot, Director of Student Life. You all just heard from Alicia Walker, Assistant Director for Student Life. And we also have Jashay Williams, the Director of the First Year Experience. And these are the crew of folks that really can talk a lot about our parental outreach from a couple of different dimensions. And I also have to give a great shout out to Essex County College and Keith Kirkland's group, because they were really the inspiration for some of the work that we're doing with our virtual parental outreach here. Because that was a presentation, one of the first one of these, where they were talking about some of the outreach that they were doing at Essex. And that really inspired us and my supervisor, Jackie Bellin, who's the vice president of student affairs. It kind of got us psyched up about doing something there. So I really have to give that shout out because we really appreciate, and it's always great to learn from each other as we move forward. So first I'll talk a little bit about our former parent presentations. So we really focused within the first year experience office, and Joshua will talk a little bit more about it when we get to her, but we had an in-person parent program. Where at one point we would separate the students from the parents. And I did participate in some of those programs where we really were kind of, letting students get away from their parents for a little bit, let them learn how to interact with the college. But then also the idea was that we would give parents that information so that there would be a second ear to listening to some of the same information the students were getting. So that was kind of what we had always been doing throughout our orientation process with the first year experience office. And that kind of, was some of the foundation we had as we moved forward. Hold on, I just need to move something up on my screen here. When it came to the new purpose during the pandemic, we realized that we have a lot of information. We need to get it to students in a different way. And the more people who were listening to this information, the better. Because, students were overwhelmed with so much information coming at them, so much overwhelmed with what is happening to them in their overall environment, their work environment. We really wanted to make sure that we were able to do a lot of outreach and get the information out so students can get registered. And I think that was one of our key things. So we did a lot of, this whole idea of a parental outreach really started from that basis of communication and realizing that there are a lot more communication challenges while we're doing everything remote. And we really need to figure out how to get that information out to students as much as possible. And now as we kind of go forward, we have the entire program broken up into 3 main pieces, and I'm going to kick it off over to Alicia, who can talk to us a little bit about some of the foundations of parental outreach and also some of the main philosophies that are guiding our college from our higher upper administration, from our president to vice president. We have Alicia's slide up here, and Alicia, I turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Jason. Next slide, please. So I am going to go over parental involvement and its impact on student success. Here's the overview of what I will be covering. We're going to just take a brief look at the old model in loco parentis, and then we're going to jump forward to the new model of in consortio cum parentibus. And then we're going to look at understanding who the parents are, and then how we started to develop parent-based interventions, and then the philosophical perspectives of our RVCC leadership. So when you think about parenting history, according to Garner, in loco parentis means in place of the parent. And this is why we asked you to do the poll, because we just wanted to see what was your thoughts around that institution-student relationship. This is where it all began with this founder, a British scholar named Sir William Blackstone back in 1765. And from there, most of all of the educational administration kind of operated in this in loco parentis. And then we're just going to move forward from when we moved from this old doctrine to our new model of in consortio cum parentibus. So that means in partnership with the parents. So this recent court cases, university policies that suggest universities act as facilitators of student development and really partner with the students to help them in their student success. You can take a look at some of all of the legal history and historical perspectives where you can see how this went through several phases before we even got to this place where we're currently acknowledging that the parent and family involvement is actually critical to the success of students, their development, and just throughout their journey through college. So who are the parents? When you start thinking about our parents, you know, we remember the categories and the generation ranges. I broke it down in 3 different ranges. Our baby boomers who were born from 1946 to 1965, and they would be in the age range of 55 through 74. Now, some of the characteristics that these parents had were helicopter parents, and that was like really like a bad term when you think about it, because these parents were over involved. They were very intrusive. They came to the colleges face to face and demanded answers, but they did this all on behalf of the student, and the student never actually had the opportunity to do anything for themselves. Then we look at this next generation, which is called Generation X. They were born from 1966 to 1976. They're in the age range of stealth parents. These parents are pretty much involved and they're very much connected, but they are more informed. They inform themselves via digital resources. They are the parents of the millennials. And if you take a look at just how they operate, it's very different from the helicopter parents, because they're not as intrusive, but they do want to stay connected and informed as to what their students are doing in the classroom or on the college campuses. Now we have the generation category of the millennials, where some of the older millennials actually have kids now who are in college. They were born from 1977 to 1995, and the age range is 25 to 43. Now, this group is very different from the 2 prior groups in terms of the characteristics. They're called perennial parents. These parents empower their students. They work in partnership with their student, and they also teach their students to use the digital resources because they were born in a digital era. So it's a very different parent and a very different student when you look at these 3 different generations. So when you start thinking about knowing your audience to determine what type of parent-based interventions you can actually offer, you want to have a sense of what kind of potential barriers that your parents and your students are actually facing. So some might be first-generation students or parents who have never attended college. They are less likely to know how to navigate the college system to support their student. Some are from low socioeconomic status, so which means they're generally in poverty, and sometimes that's tied to whether or not they're first generation as well. So again, less likely to be knowledgeable about how to navigate the services at a college. Then we have immigrants. They come in with language barriers, and also they are expected to Americanize or acculturate into our system and ways of being. Then we have to take a look at cultural and religious norms. You know, who are our students? And when we talk about this idea of cultural competency, what do we know about some of the ideologies that our students bring in or our families bring in from their countries or from their different religious perspectives that we need to understand in order to offer programs that's going to actually support our parents. And then you want to look at the fact that most of the households are headed by single women of color. So how do you support all of these different types of audiences when we're talking about supporting parents? So we wanted to take a look at some of the philosophical perspectives by our leadership. We recommend that you do that before you even initiate any type of parent-based intervention program or parent support program, because you want to make sure that if you're going to be offering these programs that you have support from your leadership. So we have some information from our president, Dr. Michael McDonough, and this is what he said. He said, I think parents need to be supportive, need to be engaged in the educational journeys of their children, and they also need to let their children find their voice, find their identity. Support, don't meddle, advocate, don't interfere, care, don't smother. And next, We have our perspectives from Dr. Debra Preston, and she is given a perspective from the academic affairs side of the house. Her perspective is, I think parental involvement is inevitable and that we waste valuable time and energy trying to fight it, except for when it violates FERPA, of course. I think instead we should focus on channeling that family support to productive activities, reducing family demands on full-time students, encouraging students to be independent, helping them research and navigate college support systems. It's good to have recruitment and orientation sessions for parents to start helping them know the best ways to support their students without taking over. And finally, we have a perspective from our Student Affairs and Outreach side of the house, Jackie Bellin, who is our Vice President for Student Affairs and Outreach. And she says, support from parents, caregivers, and friends is incredibly beneficial for students. It can help them manage their finances, make good educational choices, and encourage positive behavior. However, when well-meaning support crosses over to enabling, it becomes less beneficial. Perhaps this is what is meant by helicopter parenting. Actions that may discourage students from taking personal responsibility, thereby thwarting personal growth and development, are ultimately harmful to student development. So as we look at these perspectives from our leadership, they're pretty much in sync, that we as an institution support parent involvement or family involvement for our students because we want to act in partnership with the student and with the parents so that we can provide a holistic student experience for all of our students coming in. We want to ensure that our parents feel welcome and that they know how to navigate our systems and college resources so that they can also provide that support and act as accountability partners for their student. So with that, I am going to introduce our next speaker, my colleague, Joshe Williams.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. As Alicia said, my name is Joshe Williams, and I am the director of the first year experience at Raritan Valley Community College. So I just want to talk about, and I appreciate the information that Alicia just shared, sort of a bird's eye perspective. And I really want to bring it down to the ground floor. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the why, the when, the how, and specifically how first year experience chose to engage our parents. So for the why, right? So we're starting with that. So if there are any student affairs veterans on the line, remember how we used to talk about parents? Again, I've been hired for about 20 plus years, and it was some interesting things that we used to say, right? So Alicia mentioned helicopter parents, but what other names can you think of? So I can think of bulldozer, wrecking ball, non-existent, cheerleader, submarine, bystander, right? So now we're seeing with better eyes, we're engaging in research and we're developing initiatives from two key lenses that have made a substantial difference in how we do things. That first lens is our ownership. And since most of you do not know me, I will say this as neutrally as possible. We're doing a better job of acknowledging that we're not perfect. So we could be doing better at communicating, aligning our services, engaging students and parents, better at educating them, better at serving, addressing under-resourced students and populations, just better, right? But then I think our other lens that we're looking through, especially now, is care. And because of that, we can toss those labels and understand that parents have a why, right? So that some may not have the background knowledge of higher education or financial ability to send their child to school, but they want to provide support and help. And there are others who are ready to swoop in at a moment's notice, experiencing trauma in the past, are currently experiencing trauma and don't want that to happen again, right? So whatever experiences we have with them, it's not about us, right? It's more, and the more we realize that, the better we can serve our students. Just my little plug for Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 agreements. Don't take anything personal, right? That's one of the agreements. So when you think about our mission statement for all of our institutions, right, the goals we've set up for ourselves are extremely powerful and they're extremely challenging, again, especially now. So we know what the world looked like before global disruptions, right? And we're experiencing several all at once. So we're addressing creating critical thinkers, intellectually curious leaders, civic engagers, informed citizens, and those things should be a part of our mission. But in order to do what we set out for our students to achieve, they need support, and so do we. Because as friendly as we are, as much free stuff as we give away, and as often as we say my door is always open, students don't know us, right? So my mom taught me never to talk to strangers, and to them, I'm a stranger, regardless of the free t-shirt, regardless of the snacks. So why would they feel comfortable talking to me? Because now their weight carries mental health issues, carries financial issues, carries abuse, carries trauma, discrimination, microaggressions, immigration status, food insecurity, homelessness, isolation, COVID-19, and as of the past couple of days, electricity for some, right? So we need parents. We need them in the conversation. We need them in the room, the virtual room. We need them to know what's going on. With regards to the when, so our marketing and missions departments do a really great job of engaging students and people about the opportunities of our institutions. We have, again, open houses, information sessions, text messaging, call campaigns, mailers, websites, you name it, they do it all, right? The student bill also does a really great job of luring parents into our communities. Come be a part, pay this balance, you know? But are we making sure that they're a part of the process in between them getting introduced, then getting them a bill, and then getting them to the graduation ceremony? So it's crucial that we engage them as soon as we're willing to. And because of the season of uncertainty, of heightened frustrations, of lack of resources, of knowledge is really potential power. Because when they understand and feel secure about something, especially something like paying thousands of dollars to send a child to college in their living room, they share their experiences. And when they don't feel secure about that same thing, they share their experiences, right? So for us, our how starts as soon as they're admitted. Our admissions office sends the first year experience office lists of students, and we set out to gather information. So we create a welcome form, which asks a lot of questions, but it's an opportunity for us to know these students in a different way, but also we ask for their parent email. If they're under 25, it's required, right? So of course, some put their own. Some even will write in no, but they're not going to put anything. But for the most part, and partially because some of these parents are filling out the forms for their students, we get that information. So for us, our strategy is simple. We send them what we send students. The collective we, right? We don't have the capacity to teach every student how to do this. We never did, right? And I'm not referring to time or human resources, but we don't know how these students learn best. We don't know how they retain information in ways that make them comfortable. We don't know their learning styles. We don't know how to get them engaged. And while we have these theories and we can project and really even identify some of these barriers, we still need that support, right? So now that they're a registered student, they're on their own, they're set up their own finances, set up their schedules, set up their access to our resources. We can schedule an appointment with them in person via Zoom, Teams, Skype, Google, like it's just too much. And as savvy as we think these students are, if it's not on TikTok or Instagram, they don't necessarily, we can't really call them savvy, right? We have to teach them these tools. So we realized also that parents had a lot of questions that could have been answered quickly, but we're engaging with email. We can't do a quick face-to-face. We're not necessarily as accessible via phone. So we wanted to create a virtual space where we focus on the parents' needs, right? So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk to a little bit about what we did during the start of this and how we were serving our students. We thought it was so crucial to get them so much information that we just kept sending them emails. As soon as we got that information from admissions, we sent them a welcome, we sent them a form, we sent them information about how to get logged in, all these emails, right? So not only were they getting, were they overwhelmed, they were getting overlooked. We would, students would call us and we would follow up with them to say, well, we sent you an email, we're on the phone with them and they'll search through, oh yeah, here it is. They're getting overlooked. We speak a language. We know that in higher education, we have this really interesting language. And we required them to navigate through websites internally, externally, in a language that was our own, to find information that we thought made sense to put it in those locations. So we had them kind of searching all over the place. And again, we were generating a lot of questions that we weren't able to immediately address. So some of the things that we did if we go to the next slide. So we streamlined our outreach. So we cut it down, thankfully, to 2 emails. So again, right after the admissions sends us their information, we give them a welcome from FYE email, talking to them about the modalities, sending them, embedding videos and things like that in there. So it's not all reading because we need to give them different options. But we also included that welcome form. So again, asking them those questions, really being able to compile information from what they send to us. Once we have their welcome form, we are able to create academic plans. And that's something that we've done this year as well, is generate an academic plan for each student. So they had an idea, since we couldn't do it in person, face-to-face, we usually had large group sessions where we could go around to each student and let them know, okay, here's your major, here's some classes. We create the academic plan for them. They're not required to take those courses, but it gives them a point of reference. And we send that in a ready for registration email, which then provides them step-by-step. Here's what you need to do. Here's where you can log in. Here's the video to watch. We recorded our session into a webinar, provided that to them, and we send that to parents. So again, we are making sure that they are both different sets of ears and eyes, getting access to this information, potentially and hopefully watching it together and being able to walk through this process, not alone, but with support, right? Then we created first year registration support Q&A sessions. Again, we don't have the capacity to address these phone calls that are constantly coming in. So we wanted to make ourselves available. So 3 times a week for 2 hours, from starting in May, running through the last week in August, we make ourselves available for any student to, preferably after they've watched these instructions, review their academic plan. But now, as we get closer to the start, we're engaging any student, but you can come in and meet with an advisor, usually a 15 to 20-minute window. But we have first year experience, we have advising and counseling services, we have our EOF, Educational Opportunity Fund program, and we have disability services. All of those people will hop in on this call and really work through the people who are waiting, work through students, working with parents, just to get their questions answered. 2 of our biggest efforts, if we go to the next slide, one became centralizing our resources, right? So again, we have this website. We did a great job, I think, all of our support services, academic affairs, of really making sure that we got information so that students knew and parents knew, perspectives knew what was going on. But again, it was all over this website. And one of the benefits of this, the outcome of this, was we were able to create a channel. So in their lines then, which is something all students have to access, we've created this centralized portal for them to get at whatever point. So pre-registration, here's what you need to consider: videos, links, forms, other lines and channels, all in one location. So at each level that whatever phase they're out of the process, they can engage. We encourage students to let their parents know, show them the lines, go through that tutorial of how to use it together, so that they can go through this process and set the tone for, hey, what's going on with your lines? And hey, let's make sure we check out those forms at every phase. So we have a pre-registration, a registration, post-registration, and we're figuring out like an orientation type of thing, or did you know, to make sure that we can get them set up and started for the first days of classes. And before I turn it over to Russell, our last initiative, again, from the conversation and the presentation from Essex, we were also thinking about how can we engage parents, because again, they have questions and they seem to be hogging up the time, which is fine, but hogging up the time where we were talking about registration with their questions about financial aid and where do we get books and if they need disability services. So we thought, how can we figure out a way to engage them? And we came up with the idea of having a Q&A session, not randomly, but scheduled at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We wanted to do this, but we just didn't have the bandwidth. We're an extremely small team, now whittled down to 2 at this point. So the combination of that, along with Essex, Jason took this idea to Student Life, and they just built something beautiful. So with that, I will turn it over to Russell, and he can talk about our programs.
Thank you so much, Joshua. All righty, so what are we talking about? We realized it's so simple. After we went home, parents didn't have a face to talk to anymore. And sometimes that's all parents need, is somebody to talk to face to face. And they can't come into the office anymore. They're tired of emails. So we developed Coffee and Connect, live with Student Life, to make sure that they knew that this was live. And we're very intentional about making it casual. And sometimes there isn't even any coffee in the mug when I'm drinking because I finished it. But I want them to feel comfortable, like they can come into this place, come into this space and just be real people talking about real problems and making some kind of connection. That's the whole purpose of the whole thing, to allow the parents to feel connected to someone on campus. Marketing of it, you can see there, we developed a nice little logo that we put on all the things that go out to parents. We did make it a reoccurring Zoom link, and that way if they miss it and they attended a previous session, they've got it. We do send out, we do this program bi-weekly, and we tell them every time they come, if you cannot stay the whole time, feel free to take off, come and go as you please. We will be doing another one in 2 weeks, so if you come back with more questions, you're always welcome to come back. Each week, we send an email with content and resources. Probably most campuses, when we went home, started creating videos for everything. And we try to keep them all short, but we compiled a list of links to all of the video resources that we had available to answer a lot of the common questions. We send that out in the email invitation to Coffee and Connect, and we instruct them that watch these at your leisure on your schedule. And if any questions come up, come and talk to us live. We do host the meetings in Zoom. We found that that was a kind of a universal platform right now that everyone can get without paying for any kind of additional account. On the call itself, we first tried, and I'll talk about the setup and evolution, we first tried to have all of us on campus available in that call. So we had like 10 or 15 staff members on this call. And our attendance at these varies, just as they do with any webinar. Sometimes there were a handful of parents, sometimes there were 15, 20 parents. We sometimes found that we had more staff members in the room and than parents. And they're just sitting there waiting for somebody to possibly ask a question. So in the evolution, we have a couple generalists in the room that can handle most questions. We then have specialists available. I have them on my phone so I can text them, and we have a meeting request for them that we ask them to accept tentatively so that they have that Zoom link on their calendar and they don't book other appointments, but they don't need to be just sitting in that room with us, not answering questions again. I hop on the Teams chat or I send them a text if a question comes up that we can't answer, and boom, they jump in the room. Makes us look good, saves them time, and we immediately have a professional specialist in the room to answer the parents' questions that we weren't able to answer. Occasionally, we still can't get connected to a parent, to the resource or specialist that needs to be available. And we simply take down all of the parents' information, and I email both folks afterwards. Let me back up a little bit. The setup of this program, Alicia hosts, and I'm kind of the guy in the chair in the background, fielding questions through the chat, listening for everything that they're asking and talking about. And I'm Googling and looking for information on our website. If no one else can answer the questions, we'll send them the link if we can. We'll get them connected to somebody. We also in Zoom have something called Breakout Rooms, and you're probably familiar. But if you're not, like right now, if one of you had a question that you wanted to ask Alicia personally and didn't want the whole world to see that, I could open a breakout room and invite both of you to step into that space. That might happen whenever somebody wants to talk about their financial situation and they don't need the rest of the world to be involved in that. If they're talking about their son or daughter's schedule and they don't want everyone else to be involved in that conversation, we can tuck them into a breakout room and the specialist can share their screen and really go into that person's problems and issues right on the spot. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback that that's appreciated. Program agenda, if you arrived early today, you heard some music playing, and we have music playing at the beginning of every meeting because we know that these never start on time. And to come into an empty, quiet room is always awkward. So we try from the very beginning to set the tone as comfortable, welcoming, and inviting. And Alicia and I are just sometimes jamming and bouncing around and singing along. And when someone comes in, we welcome them by name and tell them we're going to get started in a few minutes. And we have had little dance parties going on for the first few minutes, and parents love it. Alicia reviews the purpose, the evaluation, the ground rules, and gives them basic instructions on how Zoom works and that they can use the chat room or the Q&A and that we have breakout rooms. She goes over all of that every time, very briefly, because sometimes it's the first time some parents have been on Zoom, and we try to be conscious of that. We have a brief intro of each of the staff members where they just introduce themselves and the general area that they're responsible for. Depending on the number of people, we also like to do an introduction of the parents, and we ask them to say who they are, who the student is that they're supporting. And I want to say that we gear it more towards family, because sometimes we know that spouses and grandparents and extended family members are sometimes that support system. So our language is very often about family and students that you're supporting. So if there's a lower number of parents, under 10 or so, we'll take the time to have the parents turn on their cameras if they're willing and introduce themselves. And we've noticed more often than not that once they turn the camera on, they leave it on and they're more engaged and they're more likely to ask questions. We noticed that in the early on of the program that the first question everyone had was, what will classes look like when we return to campus? Will we return to campus? So our admissions department put together a video called the modalities video to talk about the three different modalities that our classes will be offered on in the fall. And we start the program with that video now we do. The first time, that was always the first question. So we answered it and explained it. Now we just show the video, and sometimes people say, thank you, that's what I wanted to know, and they're done. After the video, we open it up for general questions. And we tell everyone that they can either turn on their camera and verbally ask their question, and we'll answer it for everyone. They can put their question in the chat, or they can private message the host. If it's a personal question that they would like a personal response for offline or in an email or a phone call later, we give them that opportunity and explain that to them. After all of the Q&A is done, and sometimes that just snowballs and keeps rolling and fills up the whole hour, we just ask if there are any specific concerns remaining that were not addressed today. And feel free, and we provide them our email information. We're always filling the chat room with links and email addresses for any of the questions that came up. We instruct them how to copy that chat and save that to reference later. And then we wrap up with a Student Life video if time permits. I think there was one other thing I didn't mention. We did put together a Microsoft form evaluation and kept it short and simple. It's about 4 questions. We asked them the overall rating of the program, what topics were helpful to support their student success. We asked them to fill out the evaluation after the program is over, because sometimes as soon as you leave a meeting, sometimes as soon as you hang up from a phone call, you think of that other question. So we asked them to let us know if there are questions that they thought of after the fact, and we'll reach back out to them. We also asked them for recommendations going forward. How can we improve this program? And what topics would you like to have addressed in the future? We also asked them for the meeting date of the session they attended. We use the same form for all of the programs so that we can compare them over time and have the date for each one within the data set. I pulled just a few quotes in wrapping up from the evaluation form itself. Some parents said, thank you for this and for having it as a repeated event. I'm sure I will be back next month. I was glad to see this one. This is my 4th child and 4th college experience. No other college has had this available to parents, and they all should. Again, thank you for doing this. I feel more comfortable with my son taking classes this fall. And the final, good to see how RV has adapted. Thank you for doing this. So general evaluation has been very positive. We had the 5-star rating system, and we're at a 4.9 right now. And I think that I'm going to pass this back to Alicia, and she's going to talk as the host, some of the things that she keeps in mind in hosting this program.
All right, thank you so much, Russell. And I am just going to close it out with some hints and some tips for hosting. So as Russell stated, I serve as the moderator, and I get so excited when I'm on there because the music is going. Russell always gets some really good music, and the music is intentional. Like he said, it's something to you know, kind of set the tone and set the mood, and people come in dancing and, you know, we're bouncing around. So it really works. We log in about 20 to 30 minutes early just to welcome any early guests, and they are actually there sitting and waiting for us. So it's you know, you want to be there and make sure that you can greet them. Again, setting that tone with that music selection. So you choose, but you know, something upbeat, something, again, thinking about who your audience is. So you want to get music that they would know. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. Some housekeeping and Zoom etiquette. I just go over reviewing like the chat, the fact that they can actually write their messages in the chat, or, you know, as Russell explained earlier, if they want to do a personal message, they could send that to the host. We take the reactions function, even though it's like a hand clap, we use that as a hand raise. So we tell them about that and allow them to raise their hand when there's a lot of parents and family members on, so we can go in an orderly fashion. And then I talk about, you know, muting everyone out if they're not speaking so that we don't hear the background noise. And the video options, if they choose to, they can come on. You know, we always talk about, you know, we want to see who they are or anything like that. But if they don't feel comfortable, or if there's a bandwidth issue, then they can leave their videos off. And then we also teach them how to change their name. So, you know, you can click on the 3 dots and change your name so that we can, instead of it saying iPhone, we can say, you know, Johnson family or Marilyn Johnson or something like that, because I like to call people by their name. So I teach them how to do that. We definitely welcome them individually. We review the agenda, again, just reinforcing some of the things that Russell talked about. We do the staff welcomes and introductions. So again, those generalists that's in the room, they are professionals who can pretty much answer the common questions. So we usually pull someone in for our first year experience or financial aid, and then it's Russell and myself. So between us, we generally can answer the majority of the questions. But then again, if someone needs a special question, Russell will reach out to that professional. Once again, depending on that size of the audience, having the guests introduce themselves, that's a great way to get them to be engaged and interacting. Someone's asking a question about supporting Spanish-speaking families. We have not gotten to that point as of yet with Coffee and Connect, but I'm sure as we grow, we will definitely get to that point, because we will need to do that. So thank you so much for asking that question. And as we close out, I usually send them reminders or talk about the reminders about completing that evaluation, which we do ask them to open it up in the beginning so that they don't forget about it. We talk about it throughout the session. And then we ask them to download our campus communications app, RV Connect, which is Ready Education. So many of you guys have that. And then we talk about that upcoming schedule. So we have launched, in addition to Coffee and Connect for our parents and family edition, we do have a student version. So when we're meeting with our parents, we do reinforce that we have a student version, and we ask them to remind their students, and vice versa. With our students, we say, hey, remind your parents that we're going to have this Coffee and Connect live session for them. And then we teach them how to copy or save the chat before they leave out of the room. And like Russell said, with the evaluations, they have been loving this program because they feel like, you know, they want to talk to somebody. And if they can't come to the campus and talk to someone in person, this is definitely the next best thing. So I am going to close with that, and we are going to open up for any additional questions.
Alicia, I just wanted to say one other quick thing regarding kind of what I thought about as we started with the parent presentation and the whole idea of bringing in student life, because in many ways orientation was really heavy within the advising, and student life's perspective I think is so crucial because we all know the value of engagement. And not only, you know, are we, you know, teaching students how to do things to register, but really making that connection with student life, because you guys really bring them into the college. And a lot of the work that you all are doing within student life is going to be so important if we're going to retain these students in this very challenging environment. So as you as a college think about doing that, think about where a program like this is going to rest. And I think student life has a extreme value, especially going into the summer orientation period. But
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, Jason, because as I was doing some research, I looked at not only the community colleges in New Jersey, but then some of the four-year institutions. And a program like this, a family outreach program, does lie in the student life domain. And I think the reason why is exactly what you said, is because of that engagement beyond the classroom. We're looking at developing the whole student, right? When we said we're looking at a holistic approach to the student experience, well, you're going to get all of that interactions and engagement on the student life side. So some of our parents don't really understand what we do or know that we exist. And so when they come on and get to see some of the things that we do with student leadership development and getting students socially connected and civically engaged, they're really impressed about all of the things that we do beyond the classroom for our students. And Russell, feel free to add anything to that.
What I will add is just a follow-up to the question, how do you support Spanish-speaking families? With that concern, as well as any question, one thing that I think I try to make sure is that every family that comes into the room, every family that joins us on Coffee and Connect gets their questions and concerns directly answered by a person within 24 hours. A couple weeks ago, we had a family member ask, what is the cost breakdown in your auto tech program? None of the specialists or generalists in the room had any idea about that. But by 8 p.m. that evening, I had made sure that somebody in that program sent them the 2-year spreadsheet breakdown of every cost by term. And they had responded, thank you, this is exactly what I was looking for. I had no idea that that spreadsheet even existed. But to tie that back to with Spanish-speaking families, we do have Spanish-speaking staff members in several departments across campus. So when that comes up, I would make sure that within 24 hours, a Spanish-speaking staff member called that family at home and had a conversation to put them at ease and to answer your questions and make them feel like they are as valued and connected to this campus as everyone else.
I'll just add to that too, that this is just an opportunity to connect the dots. Like at this point with things being virtual, even in our planning conversations, we talk about, let's take care of this space, and we have to do a better job of really aligning that student service if we're going to get them from point A to point Z. And I think this does an amazing job of really visually showing that connection. So if it's not addressed right then, I see him on Teams. I'm usually on the calls, but if I'm not, he'll connect with me and say, hey, can you hop on? And we can go into a separate room and answer questions. It's about connecting those dots, which I think makes this really powerful. It gives parents an ease because again, it's uncertainty. Everything is new and their understanding of that, which is really appreciative, but when we can address their concerns, then they're more secure.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you sharing this project, particularly Coffee and Connect, and all of the strategy that went into developing this. It was a very thorough conversation, discussion. Thank you so much. I wanted to open it up to everyone on the line. Does anyone have a question or comments? Keith, our friend Keith at Essex RVC took our basic model and put it on steroids, exclamation point. Glad this presentation was recorded so he'll share it with his team. Yep, we'll get the recording out. Usually it takes anywhere from 10 minutes to 24 hours with Zoom. And we'll get the recording out to everyone via the Student Services listserv to share with their staffs. Another compliment from Dr. Mattis at the Brookdale, way to go RVCC. Thank you all. Any other questions or comments? So with that, thank you all for joining us. I want to especially thank our presenters today and our presenters throughout this whole series. I have a feeling that while this might be the end of our summer session of doing this, we might be doing this again in the fall on other topics in the student services, student life area. So if you're on the line and your college has an innovative practice in student services and student affairs, and you think, hey, we would like to share this, like the folks at Raritan Valley did today, we'd like to share this with our colleagues throughout the state. By all means, please reach out to me, let me know, and we can get you in the queue and set you up so you could be one of our presenters for this in the future. And with all of that said, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Have a great weekend. I hope there are no thunderstorms for anybody. I hope everybody has their power back and it stays on for the rest of your lives. So
Thank you.
thanks, everybody. And we'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
For
Jason.
having us,
Thank you,
Jake.
Jacob. Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Great job.
Thank you.